Hello and welcome in. I am Greg Smith, recruiting extraordinaire for Hail Varsity, and we are back again for another Thursday football video. I am joined once again by staff writer of Hail Varsity, Steve Marik. Steve, how are you this morning, man?
I'm doing great. Coming off the spring game, got a lot to talk about. I think it was a cool environment for everyone involved. The play on the football field, however, that could be debated if it was fun or not. But yeah, it was overall it was a good day. Still fun to get out there with people in the stands and see some live football.
Yeah, that's my thing too. It's always good to just be back in Memorial Stadium and kind of, see some semblance of football, to get that atmosphere for like my day-to-day purposes. Hearing from recruits and seeing like the 100+ recruits that they had on campus over the weekend was really neat. Like it was really, I think, a nice show for the Huskers that, hey, when they really get after it, they can put together one of these big time recruiting weekends. And I think that that's a really good, like, just kind of put a pin in that note, because that's a really good sign for what's to come in the summer, for official visits, and then eventually when we get to the fall, I think for official visits in the fall for game days as well, and trying to build up that pipeline for future classes. But that we are not here to talk about recruiting. I've been talking about recruiting all week. We are here to talk about football. And the one thing I really wanted to get into with Steve is, now that we're through spring, and this was kind of a spring where we talked a lot about, there are a lot of different questions that needed to be answered. We knew that some might be answered or hope to be answered by the end of spring, but some would not obviously be answered. So as we head into the summer, Steve, for you, what's something that's on your mind that you're like, man, Nebraska has really got to get this to come together this summer?
Yeah, I was kind of thinking about this, and I kept going back to the offensive tackles. Right now, I don't know if it's just because I just got done watching the spring game, just like everybody else, and seeing, Garrett Nelson, Jamari Butler, Caleb Tanner just embarrass the offensive tackles that were playing on the field. But yeah, I just think that that's a glaring weakness right now. It is that offensive line, and especially on the outsides, on the edges with those tackles. Yeah, it's just. I think that's one of the biggest problems right now, because, when you're talking about a new offense, a new quarterback, everybody trying to get this new offense together, one thing that would really, really help is if the quarterback didn't worry about, getting sacked and getting hit and having the pocket collapse on himself almost immediately. So I think that's one thing that is the biggest question going into the summer, is that tackle position. And, if Turner Corcoran comes back from injury, where is he going to be? Right. And then and if he's not at a tackle, if they want to try him at center, who else are you shuffling around just to kind of make the best combination of the 5 guys out there? And, Teddy Prohaska, hopefully it's just hard with Prohaska and Corcoran, because, they're rehabbing injuries. They're going to be there at fall camp, but like, what kind of condition are they going to be in? Are they going to be in to kind of step right in and act like they haven't missed any time? I really doubt that. But yeah, it's just going to be really interesting to see how those 2 guys come back and how long it takes them to get acclimated back to, those physical reps, instead of just those mental reps like they've gotten this spring. So yeah, just the offensive tackle position for sure. And then you can even talk about the center position with Trent Hickson, kind of, trying to make something of his career after starting for all those games in 2019 and then getting benched in 20, playing a little bit in 21, and now looking like he's going to be the starting center right now in 22. That'd be a cool story if he kind of goes in there and does well and is serviceable at center. So there's just a lot of questions on the offensive line, and for a team that has a new offense, a new quarterback, a lot of new position coaches on the offensive side, for them to do well this season. I think a solid offensive line protecting Casey Thompson or whoever wins the quarterback competition is going to be kind of the biggest need.
Yeah, and I also think, though, being able to hit the ground running, rushing the football would be a huge help. I just think that to me, timing wise and just what you have to get accomplished, I mean, I could be completely wrong here. I just find that it's probably easier to get the timing down in the run game and, firing off the ball the way that Donovan Raiola wants them to. I just feel like that will be easier for those guys to work into than maybe the full on, like how he wants them to pass protect. And like I said, I could be wrong, but to me, it just feels easier to do that. And so I think you're dead on. I think that what happens with especially Teddy and Turner coming back off of those injuries, and like, when will they be able to actually be out there full go? Like, are they, like, when in a week or so here, when the team starts getting together and running through stuff on their own and they start doing their own conditioning and that sort of stuff, are they going to be participating, or will they have to wait until, like, whenever it is that actual team organized summer conditioning starts? Because they need that time. As we saw, like, kind of in the spring game, like, everyone, it was a little clunky at times, right? You get, like, everyone is on equal footing when it comes to kind of learning the new tweaks to the system. I don't want to say it's a full-on new system, because it probably won't be, but I do think that there will be, some, like, actual changes to what they do on offense, and everyone has to learn that. And with those two guys being such young players, I just worry sometimes about how much, like, everyone is putting on both of their shoulders to just come back and hit the ground running, knowing that they've got to build on what they did last year. In the case of Teddy, like, he started off well, but it was really only one game. And then in the case of Turner, he's got to bounce back. And he also has to be healthy, because if the reason that, and I think the reason that he struggled so much last year is because he struggled to stay healthy and he wasn't healthy to start the season. Well, what are we talking about right now, right? His health and him being back, ready to go 100%. So yeah, I think that those are huge question marks and really will change the look of the offense overall if those guys can be back. And so I love that pick. That's a really good pick. I think the way that I'm going to go on the other side of the ball to another thing that we've talked quite a bit about here, especially recently with the official visitor over this weekend. And that's, even though, and as you wrote, Nebraska, I think it was you that wrote this, right, about Jamari Butler and Garrett Nelson, and kind of the bright lights that they were during the spring game. And I think that they both showed flashes. And I like some of the stuff that you saw from Blaze Gunnerson as well in there too. And I think he's coming along and is back on schedule too. But that being said, you always want more pass rush. Nebraska needs to get more pass rush. How will they do that? And I think that whether or not can they land O'Shawn Mathis, that's obviously the big point here about that. And you want to get him in. He said he's going to announce by the end of this month. And if you're Nebraska, that's right on schedule for when you would love to have him, so he can be here for the full summer, and then take part in summer conditioning, and then also obviously in fall camp leading up to the first game of the season against Northwestern. But it's not just Mathis. Like, it won't end there, nor should it. Nebraska is going to need to get at least one more, like, edge rusher, which maybe you don't do that if you get Mathis, but they really need an interior tackle. Like, I think that the thing that kind of stood out to me relating to the spring game, once we got later in that game, I don't know if you caught this, to me, it looked like the D-line was kind of gassed. In a spring game in which we're really trying to get everyone out of there healthy. Now, it didn't help a ton that it felt like the offense was going really fast at one point, which was just bizarre, knowing the situation.
I thought the same thing.
Yeah, okay, so I wasn't alone in that. Okay, so I'm glad. So I'm like, am I crazy on this, or are they going fast? And so that's great for the offense. They found a way to get that done, and that helped fuel their comeback. But at the same time, that's not good for the defensive line. We know they don't have a lot of bodies, especially on that interior. You still got to get Casey Rogers healthy. You still have to bring along a couple of other guys like Masai Newsome, Nash Hutmacher, and others. Can Nebraska land another interior lineman? It doesn't have to be a superstar. It needs to be someone that you can play, 15 snaps a game, so that you can kind of bridge that gap. Because my worry is that you're going to wear down a couple of guys in Robinson and Rogers. One of them, Rogers, being someone who has a problem staying healthy to begin with.
Yep, totally agree. Yeah, I mean, Robinson and Rogers need to stay healthy, because those are the top two guys right now. And I liked what Colton Feast showed right behind those two. He was out there for a lot of reps during that spring game, and he's a guy who's coming off injury himself from last year, who probably would have saw a little bit of action maybe. But yeah, I mean, just adding another interior defensive lineman is kind of a must for me, in my opinion, because obviously O'Shawn Mathis is a very talented edge rusher. He showed what he can do with the pass rush against Big 12 offenses. Is that going to be the same against Big 10 offenses? It's a little bit of a different style over here in the Big 10 than it is Big 12, but I still think he'd be, he's a grown man. He's experienced, he's really good. Obviously I think he'd come here and do really good things, but yeah, like you said, I'm worried about the interior behind Robinson and Rogers, and we'll see what Nash Hutmaker. I love what he can do, but my thing with him, like I've said before, is just how long can he last? Like during a game, can he be bench pressing centers off of himself like he showed against Trent Hickson a couple times in the center in the spring game? How long can he do that? How many times per game can he do that? He's a big dude. And with those guys, it's just the stamina is kind of the problem, or the kind of question with really large, strong guys like that. So yeah, I'm totally with you. Find another interior guy, because I think Ty Robinson was even a huge fan of that, right? When we were talking about him, talking to him during availability.
Yeah, he definitely was. It's such an odd thing. And I think Colton Feast was also a guy that mentioned this, that, the team was probably going to look into the portal to see if they could get some help in that area. That is still jarring to me to hear players on the team, especially at that position, say that, they might be looking for more guys to come in and help. Now, obviously in the case of Ty and probably Colton as well, who's worked himself into rotation, they don't have to worry about necessarily like not being out there. Like Ty definitely doesn't, but and so it's just such a weird thing to have that happen. And part of the thing is that we saw even last year, as good as the defense played in stretches, right? Over time, they kind of wore down. And it was a different reason. They were out there longer because the offense had a lot of struggles. But at the same time, you could see the same thing happening. You can just see it in your mind, right? The same thing happening this year if they don't have as much depth there. So they definitely need to get that taken care of. Is there another like wild card thing that you'll be looking for? I'm putting you on the spot here, but is there another wild card thing that you're looking for?
I guess maybe the backup quarterback situation. How about that one?
Okay.
I think Casey Thompson has kind of cemented himself as the top candidate for QB1. He carries himself like a starting quarterback. He was out there for the first 3 series. Didn't get a lot of opportunity, I guess, but like I've written, he didn't really need to. So yeah, but it's behind him that I was kind of wondering about, because I really like Logan Smothers. I really like Chuba Purdy. I really like Heinrich Harburg, but only one guy. Maybe we came into the spring game thinking it was Logan Smothers, but now after watching Purdy, I'm kind of wondering about okay, does Purdy showed a little something here? He was one of the guys. There were like 3 passes in the spring game that I really looked at. I'm like, oh wow, that was a really good pass. Logan Smothers had a deep ball. It fell incomplete, but that was because Quentin Newsome played the ball perfectly, and Oliver Martin couldn't haul it in. Purdy threw a really great 27-yard reception to AJ Rollins, who is
probably the best play. Like that and the Anthony Grant run were the two best plays, I think, of the day.
Yeah, I want to say something about that Anthony Grant run. It was a really great run, and I think we like it because he showed his shiftiness, right? His quick just like juke ability, and then he took off. That was awesome. But my man Simon Odie from York, Nebraska, I'm pretty sure he would have got the tackle there at TFL. So I just want to throw that out there. Aside from that, it was still a great run from Anthony Grant and everything. But then, that 27-yard pass from Chuba Purdy looked really great. And then Heinrich Harburg threw a really good deep ball to John Goodwin. I think it was John Goodwin in the 4th quarter on Saturday. So they all showed something, but only one guy needs to win that backup quarterback job. And I'm thinking it's a battle right now between Logan and Chuba, who, by the way, only had basically 3 practices this spring because of that foot issue he had right when he got here.
Yeah, and I think I agree with you. I think that is something that we There's so much attention, and rightfully so, paid to the starting quarterback, and now Casey Thompson looks poised to be the guy. Whether or not Frost wants him to be pushed a little bit more is a whole separate discussion, and I think he does. And he might end up getting that if Purdy is healthy, at least in some way, shape, or form. He might get a little bit of push to look over his shoulder. But I do think that what ends up happening with that backup role, considering I can't remember the last time, and it may be like Tommy Armstrong's junior season, maybe, that a quarterback at Nebraska played the entire season. So it just doesn't happen. And that's not unique to Nebraska. It is very hard to pull that off. And so you're going to need that backup quarterback at some point, especially considering each of these quarterbacks has had injuries, right? In their past. And so it's not unfathomable to think that they would end up having injuries as well. So I'm with you. How much work those guys can do kind of one-on-one or in a group setting with their teammates, like Chuba Purdy mentioned after the game, that they're going to try and throw with the receivers every other day. Like, I think that could provide some real nice gains for all of them. They all need it, receivers and quarterbacks alike, especially with Chuba only having a few practices under his belt during spring football.
And for having only a few practices, like for Saturday being his third practice, he looked pretty dang good in the pocket. He wasn't, scared and kind of flushed out right away when those tackles kind of collapsed and let the pass rush in. But he stood strong. He looked like a quarterback. He looked poised, confident. He had zip on his passes. I really liked what Chuba showed. Logan, threw the most passes, wasn't a great completion percent, but again, it's a spring game. I just don't know how much stock we should put into that. That's why I think it's just going to be such a battle, I think, and such an interesting discussion for that backup quarterback role.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that and plenty of storylines to keep an eye on hailvarsity.com and on this YouTube channel here. Make sure you're liking and subscribing to the channel and the videos. We'll be bringing you more throughout the off season. These videos will not go away. We'll be back next week with more Thursday football action. We will talk to you soon.